Shalom all.
Hello, hello.
Oh,
Hi there. Yeah, sorry, just had to adjust some of the lighting behind me. Hi, Susie. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Shell, long time no see.
Hi,
And
Susie.
Charlotte, it's been
Susie.
so long.
At least 20, 30 minutes,
Yeah,
maybe more.
Right, exactly.
I hope everyone is doing well. Wait, we're missing somebody here. Hmm. I have Rabbi Zucker. No, no, he's gone. I guess he was having trouble connecting. Minute.
You have to.
Okay. Tons of mail. I don't know why. Um, so Rabbi Zucker still isn't in view, which is frustrating. I mean, he has both mic and video turned off, but I don't even see. In the meantime, I'm going to share the screen with our texts for today and make it legible. Okay, there we go. And I think we're all here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I can hear you too. Good. So this week, of course, we come to a section that begins really the second half of Sefer Shemot, which is first of all the larger covenant. We had the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances given by God on Mount Sinai, but now we have much greater detail into the laws, and they cover a variety of topics. This is often called Sefer HaBrit, the Covenant Code. Um, and then at the end, we have kind of a remarkable moment where God sits down for lunch with the elders and Moses and Aaron. It's, just reminds me of the Woody Allen joke. He had a humorous course catalog, and one of the courses in there was God, a confrontation with the creator of the universe through informal lectures and field trips. Um, and
Field trips.
pardon me?
Field trips.
Field trips, yeah, that's what he had in the course catalog. So it just kind of reminded me of that, this ending when they're sitting there and eating and they're fine. Anyway, we're going to focus on just one of the laws, and we'll see why, because this law just stands out so much in this parasha. And I think it's something that's very, very important. So let me see, did Rabbi Zucker make it in? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Hi, Rabbi Zucker. I'm so glad you
Good
made it in.
afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, sorry it took
Love,
so long.
love the hat. Okay.
Okay, now I can
My
see
hair's a
all
little
of
bit
you.
wild today, so
Yeah. So, taking a look at these, and also I should say that this is a law that appears twice in our parasha. So twice in one parasha, that's pretty, that says that this is important.
Important.
Yeah. So, do I have a volunteer? Ricky, welcome back.
Hello.
Again, so many people I haven't seen in such a long time. Uh, I should have brought my computer upstairs and we all could have continued sitting around the table. So, Do I have a volunteer to read our psukim, our verses that we're going to look at today?
I'll read,
Marie.
Rabbi.
What? I missed that.
I'll read.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Now, a sojourner, you are not to maltreat, you are not to oppress him, for sojourners were you in the land of Egypt.
Yeah, so that's in chapter 22. And then chapter 23, we
3.
also have.
A sojourner, you are not to oppress. You yourselves know the sojourner's feelings, for sojourners were you in the land of Egypt.
So basically, what is
This.
the command here that's emphasized because it appears twice?
Be good to people who are not part of your group.
Yeah.
Be decent.
Yeah, in this case, they're talking about gerim, which literally means stranger. And we'll see that in the sources we'll look at, they kind of go back and forth between referring to it as a stranger. It's, there was also the ger toshav, the resident alien. I'm not really interested in the distinctions between all of these terms. I'm really going to be understanding, I think, when we look at all of our texts, to think of the term ger as, Charlotte, as you said, someone outside your group, if you will, the other with a capital O.
Mm-hmm.
The other person, because it could also be, as we know, ger is a convert in modern Hebrew, and certainly through much of Jewish literature. And we'll see it kind of goes back and forth in the commentaries and what's being said. But clearly very important to respect and treat well the other, and in particular, why?
We were treated that way in Egypt,
Right,
and we know how it feels, and we want to
exactly.
take away that feeling from other people, and
Yeah.
that's the way it is. That's the way it is. I think in modern times too.
Well,
Like in my building, we have a variety of religions and people from different backgrounds, and we're all nice to each other,
yeah,
and that's the way it should be.
yeah. And certainly for the Bible, yeah. And here we're talking really about someone who is from another land or with a resident or just living in your land. But you hit it that we do this because we were in that situation. Ve'atem yedatem et nefesh hager. You yourselves know the sojourner's feelings. Nefesh in the Bible is not soul. This is a good translation. You yourselves know the sojourner's feeling. You've been there. And in fact, in one of the Torah from JTS publications from a couple of years ago, Mark Gary, who was the executive vice chancellor and chief operating officer at JTS, and the seminal verse in Exodus 22, you shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Um, the treatment of strangers is not merely the subject of a solitary legal command. It appears to be a leitmotif of biblical literature. In fact, it is probably not too much of an exaggeration to say that the Torah is fixated on the treatment of strangers, and we'll come back to that. But he also writes, this is it's not, I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to write this down. What is more, this legal preoccupation with the stranger finds its counterpart, sorry, in the full sweep of the narrative history of the Jewish people as depicted in the Torah, not simply the Exodus story. From the outset, Abraham becomes a stranger when he leaves his home and journeys toward Canaan. We also witness Jacob during a pivotal period of his life outside the land of Israel in his uncle Laban's house, where he suffers the financial exploitation of an outsider. And then we follow Joseph as he spends virtually his entire adult life in Egypt, initially enslaved and then imprisoned before he attains high office. The notion of being a stranger appears to be embedded in the Jewish experience and internalized in Jewish identity. I would venture that this is true even in the state of Israel, which is still, for the most part, a nation of immigrants and the children of immigrants. So we have this notion of the stranger that, as we'll see, is really throughout the Torah, as Mark Gary points out, is pretty much embedded in the biblical experience of the Israelite people and also in the experience of our people. And again, I'm not worried about how we are translating ger. We know there are many ways to translate it. I am interested right now just in translating it either as stranger or the other. It's someone, as Charlotte said, not from your group. So the first place we're going to look to see how this is important in our tradition is in the Mechilta, the early rabbinic commentary on Exodus. The Mechilta, which really means collection, comes to us in two versions, that of school of Rabbi Shimon no, this should be Yishmael, Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael. The other one is by Shimon Bar Yochai. Sorry. So anyway, so let's go on and see what they are saying here. And again, we recognize that they are using ger in some ways in a different way. But still, I want to keep to the notion of the ger as other. Charlotte, why don't you continue?
Now a stranger you are not to maltreat. You are not to oppress him. You shall not maltreat him with words, and you shall not oppress him in money matters. Do not say to him, yesterday you worshipped the deity of Nevo, and the flesh of swine is still between your teeth, and you would dare contend with me?
So what's this person saying to the ger?
Doesn't matter what you did, who you believe in.
Well, no, it does. You know, he's
here, ger is a, I would assume here it's as a potential member of the community.
Right, a convert.
Convert.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things we're not supposed to do is remind the convert of his or her background, as this, yesterday you worshiped the deity of Nevo, you were worshiping idols. And look, you still, the remains of Chazir is still between your teeth. In other words, like, who the hell are you to talk to me? You have this background, you ate treif, you can't and what they're saying is, no, you can't say this to a ger. And go on.
And from where is it derived that if you taunt him, he can taunt you in return? And and the stranger you shall not afflict, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt.
Yeah. So
again,
yeah, like you said before, quite correctly, Charlotte, that you had the same kind of experience. You know what it's like to be the other. So don't go verbally mistreating a person who is other, reminding them of their background or whatever. Your background is not so wonderful either. And all one has to do is take a look at the Haggadah Shel Pesach. In the Haggadah, we kind of have like two stories of where we came from. In one case, we were idol worshippers. In the other one, we were slaves. So, rather ignoble origins. And we can't lord it over anyone else. So
nowadays, I think that would even apply to Jewish Baalei Tshuva.
Good point.
Yeah. You don't think so?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Because that's where I've actually heard it done the most. Not so much with people who were originally not Jewish and became Jewish. For them, people have a very considerate attitude. It's much more the Jews who once say treif, and then all of a sudden, they decide that they want to keep kosher. And then once they decide they want to keep kosher, they start going after everybody else who, didn't quite learn it from a book, but learned it from their mother or father. You understand what I'm saying? What Chaim Soloveitchik called what was that? Rupture and reconstruction. Well,
Yeah,
it was once upon a time people learned kashrut from their parents, not from a book. Okay,
right.
whatever your parents did is what you did. You know,
Right.
Mhm.
but Ballet Tuba learned it from a book, so the book might say something a little bit different than what your parents did. And
Yeah,
the next thing you know, you're having a whole big to do.
yeah, yeah. That's certainly very much correct. And but that's also kind of like the reformed smoker. It's just um, but so the tradition is going to go even more than that. And again, probably here they're talking about converts as opposed to strangers or resident aliens. A little bit different how it's understood in rabbinic literature than in the Torah. But go on with a little bit more from the.
Beloved are the strangers, for in many places you are exhorted to concerning them. And the stranger shall not afflict, and you shall love the stranger, and you
You have
have known
known.
the soul of the stranger. Rabbi Eliezer says, because the stranger's past is to his disadvantage, Scripture exhorts him concerning him in many places.
Yeah, so they're really raising up, and here they're talking about converts mostly, that, you really you don't. We have this so many times in the Torah, as we'll see in the next section from Bavli Baba Metzia, that, this is all over the place precisely because his past is to his disadvantage. The converts, because he was, and of course, then we're talking about people who were idol worshippers. We're not talking about people today who convert, who may have come from nothing. They may have been raised with nothing, or they're lapsed Christians or lapsed Muslims. They're, and it's a different situation to some extent. But
Rabbi, I've known of people who have converted and they have become more observant than people that they married into.
oh yeah, all the time we see this.
Absolutely. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe to prove to other people that they're really Jewish
Well,
now. I don't really
sometimes
know the
it's to
reason.
prove it.
Seriously.
Other times, yeah, yeah, they take it seriously. They come to it as adults and they
Yes.
really understand it in a very, very deep level.
Yes.
It's there's a phrase in the Talmud, and you'll guys will correct me if I get it wrong. Kashin gerim al Yisrael kedarvanim. Um,
Kisapachat.
Kisapachat? Okay, I think
Yeah,
there may be a couple. Yeah.
kisapachat.
Yeah, so basically, converts are hard in Israel like thorns. And one interpretation is that it's because they become a fifth column. They never really accept anything, and they're always undermining it. And the other one is they make the born Jews feel guilty, because they are really observant. And I have to say that, I have had many students where, like, I'm so impressed with how they conduct their lives and the commitment they have to Judaism. I had a class of Jews by choice in Ottawa, and I think just about every one of them within a year, 2 years, had traveled to Israel. Not just were they keeping kosher homes and keeping the mitzvot, but they had traveled to Israel. Now, a couple of them had families in Israel, and one of them actually I did the wedding in Israel. But there's no question in that, sometimes they have been with their Jewish partner for many, many years, and it's really part of their lives. So I had one back in Kansas City, a Jew by choice, who, when his mother died, of course, she was, he went to all the stuff that they did for his mother, but he needed a night of Shiva. He needed to say Kaddish because he was a Jew. He needed a Jewish way to mourn. So, a lot of, unfortunately, he went off the deep end, became a little crazy, but
That's neither here nor
that's
there.
neither here nor there. The fact is that, there's a great deal, I understand this sense of, they can be deeply committed, But Susie, you have your hand up?
I just want to say that my daughter-in-law is a perfect
Yeah,
example.
absolutely.
She did the Haftorah, when they were there for Shabbos, and she learned Hebrew, and she's amazing.
Yeah, but look at your daughter-in-law's husband, Susie. That's
Well,
that's really it. You're not taking enough credit for yourself there.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. I
thank
think there's
you,
there's there's a lot to be said, but I have to say that I look at some of my colleagues who were not born Jews. In fact, kind of ironically, one of my colleagues, unfortunately, who just recently passed away, one of the things her husband liked about her is that she wasn't Jewish. Now she goes on to become a rabbi. So it's but also just the whole sense of compassion here for another, recognizing that they come from a different place and having respect for the journey that the person may have taken is very powerful. Now, a little bit more from rabbinic literature. Who would like to continue? This is from the Gemara, actually the same section that has the very famous story of the Tanur Shel Achnai, the Achnai oven, which we conservative rabbis, practically have to memorize because it proves that all the rabbis were conservative. Um, Not really, but
Except they
it's
don't finish that story. I remember I had a whole confrontation, not so much confrontation. Neil Gilmour was giving a class at the 23rd Street office of the United Synagogue, which
mhm.
was a little more accessible to me than the seminary was. And he starts off with that story, but just stops at the point where Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania says, that in other words, he doesn't go on to the part of a story where all the people who have a strict take on it end up dead, you know, and he just stops right there as if that's the end of the story. It's not the end of the story, you know. God is not approving of what they're doing. Okay, as you go on, you'll see for yourself.
But it's also, I have to say that sometimes we take the stories we want. Another example, there's some of you know the famous story about Moshe is transported to the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Akiva, and he doesn't understand what's going on until Rabbi Akiva says "Halacha Moshe miSinai." Then he feels better, and he's so impressed that acknowledging that the understanding of tradition develops and grows and expands. On the other hand, they never tell the end of the story, which is horrible, frankly, because they say, oh, this is, so what's the reward for this? And you're giving Torah through me. Well, look at this guy. What's his reward? And they show him being tortured to death. And, the answer in both cases is God saying, this is how it occurred to me. It's a kind of a frightening story, but, everyone kind of skips that. Even, by the way, we're coming up to Purim. The great story, the line, you have to drink until you don't know the difference between blessed is Mordecai and cursed is Haman, or the opposite. No one tells the rest of the story where two rabbis get together, they get drunk, and one kills the other. And then there's a miracle, and he's brought back to life. And the next year, the other rabbi says, "Oh, let's have Purim Suda together again." And he said, "No, I don't trust a miracle that happened twice." So it's you know all of these things are part of larger contexts, but sometimes they can be illustrative of certain ideas. Even in this atomistic reading, even if it's not looking at everything. So here we go to the Bavli, a volunteer to read.
I read.
Okay, thank you.
The sage is taught one who verbally mistreats the convert violates three prohibitions, and one who oppresses him in other ways violates two.
Yeah, the word ma'aneh here, mistreats, um, is Hebrew word ona'ah, mistreatment, but it can occur in both monetary matters and in it can also be done verbally. So, for example, sorry, I have Steinsaltz has a great book on Madrich Talmud. It was translated into English. Got the first, I got it when it was first published, only in Hebrew, and he explains that ona'ah, uh, in monetary cases is the prohibition to deceive another in business, in commerce. And every business dealing in which there was ona'ah, there is the in the hand of the person who is deceived to whether it's the seller or the buyer, they can go back on the agreement, or they can receive some type of a monetary payment. But also that's ona'at b'dinei mamanot in monetary cases. But there's also ona'at devarim, mistreating someone through words, and this is also a prohibition. Um, from causing another person pain through speaking words to that person that would be painful, or would embarrass him, or something like that. You just and hence you cannot embarrass a ger as convert by saying, "Oh, your parents were idol worshippers." You can't say something in such a way that would really hurt someone. So that's what ona'ah is. So ma'aneh et hager, and they are guilty of a number of lavin, prohibitions, negative commandments. Okay, go on.
What is different with regard to verbal mistreatment, that 3 prohibitions are written concerning it. And you shall neither mistreat a stranger, and when a stranger lives in your land, you shall not mistreat him, and you shall not mistreat each man his fellow, and a stranger is included in the category of a fellow.
So really kind of two questions here, but we'll see that this last question is going to be incorporated in two things. So, why is verbal mistreatment different than monetary mistreatment? And, you're quoting this verse, but does that really talk about mistreating a stranger? Okay, go on.
With regard to one who also oppresses a stranger as well, 3 prohibitions are written.
Yeah, now here, lo chetz, lo tilchatzenu. Here it's talking about monetary oppression. When it says hama'anet chavero, that's talking about verbal. Or like lo tonu tager. To go back to our verse, tonu is understood as ona'at devarim, as verbal mistreatment, and velo tilchatzenu, and you shall not pressure him literally, you shall not oppress him, being in monetary cases. So go on, sorry.
With regard to one who also oppresses a stranger as well, 3 prohibitions are written. And you shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him. Exodus. And you shall not oppress a stranger, and you shall not be to him like a creditor, and a stranger is included.
Yeah, so it says you shall not be to lo. It just says lo tia lo kenosha. It just says lo. How do we know that's a ger? So in both
We
cases,
don't. It starts when kesef
right
kalvet
at the me.
So clearly that's not what's meant.
Right.
That's okay though. The drash does what it feels like doing.
Yeah, and that's what
Doesn't
they're
have to
trying
be
to.
the shot.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, because it's not about the pshat. It's they're talking about how do we treat another, in this case, the stranger. Um, okay, and they say,
Rather, both this one who verbally mistreats and that one who oppresses violate 3 prohibitions.
in other words, we have enough verses to prove that they're violating all these prohibitions. and even if it's directed against a stranger. And then going on.
It is taught that Rabbi Eliezer the Great says, for what reason did the Torah issue warnings in 36 places, and some say in 46 places, regarding the stranger? It is due to the fact that a convert's inclination is evil. That is, he is prone to return to his previous way of living.
Yeah, here they're talking about clearly a ger, a convert. And it's really 36 places that this command appears in the Torah. As I mentioned before, and probably every rabbi who's been here before also has mentioned, this command appears more than any other command in the Torah. More than Shabbat, more than idolatry. So clearly this is a very, very important law. Now, within the context of the Torah, it's a context of hospitality and understanding. A stranger is powerless. And again, it's so much built on our experience.
But you know something, Rabbi Papi, on the notes in Torah Mima, it says that this applies to a Jewish Baal Tshuva also.
Oh, okay.
And I can understand why, because if
Yep.
anything, it's actually easier to embarrass a Jewish Baal Tshuva because the get can always say, "Well, this is how my parents raised me," you know. But if the Jewish Baal Tshuva says that, he almost starts to feel ashamed that that's how he may not even be eating at his parents' house anymore. That immediately causes a certain amount of conflict. So it's if anything, they're more likely to go back. They haven't gone through the same type of look. If you're not Jewish and you want to become Jewish, you have to go through a conversion course. You have to have a formal conversion ceremony. It's a bit of a trip. If you're Jewish and you want to become more observant, you don't have to go through any of that. You just
Right.
have to basically decide you want to become more observant. Meanwhile, your parents are on your case all the time saying, what the hell happened to you? Who got to you? Was it the Moonies? In other words, my experience has been that the problem is a lot more with the Jewish Ballet Trouba than it was with non-Jewish converts.
Yeah. Although I have to say that there is, but I mean, less so today. Today, I think certainly for converts, it's much less of an issue. People accept it and they're thrilled. Someone who's gone through the conversion process, and now especially that we have Jews by choice, who are rabbis and cantors and educators, and really prominent people in the Jewish community. It's like, okay, and yet you're right. The sense if someone becomes more observant, that's really, I remember my parents' friends telling them, don't worry, it's only a phase he's going through.
Yeah, right. This is
Yeah.
that the
And my
usual line.
parents would look back at them and say, who's worried? You know, this doesn't have to be a phase, you know? They had their pattern of observance, but they certainly were not upset that their child was becoming more observant. Of course, then again, I was, very, very I wasn't quite so extreme. I ate my parents' home and they made their, we compromised because they made their changes and, I accepted certain things. So it was a much easier, and I was an only child. So, as far as they were concerned, I was the Messiah anyway. So, it's, but, I know friends who went through a lot. Some of them put their parents through a lot too. I mean, I think that, to be honest, some balei tshuva do use their change as, you know, as, as a way of
Look at
getting
Trump. He
back.
had to get adjusted to the fact that his daughter converted to Jews and became Orthodox. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, I remember once at a conference, he says, that wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I was raising him.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Meanwhile, at least he's going to have Jewish grandchildren, which is more than a lot of other Jews can say.
yeah. Just I have to say that although on a macro level, intermarriage is certainly a problem for Judaism. It is a challenge to Jewish continuity, both spiritually and physically. On the other hand, um, what we're also seeing is that there are many intermarried couples that, one, the non-Jewish partner may convert, but even if they don't, they make a very conscious decision to raise their children Jewishly and be connected to the Jewish community. I mean, certainly those that join a conservative synagogue, it's a heck of a lot easier to join a Reform synagogue or a Reconstructionist synagogue, but they choose to join conservative synagogues. And they're
That
often
may not
very
last much
serious.
longer, Rabbi Parker. You
Well,
saw that RA
yeah,
statement that just came out
yeah. But that's, I mean, I think there's
by a
also,
majority vote too.
yeah, well, there's, frankly, I mean, I just read it quickly, but just, I mean, and I haven't read the articles about it, but, to some extent, they're, you have to come out with a statement and you want to make everybody happy, but does not necessarily reflect
Gonna
facts in the
make me
ground.
happy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
All right,
certainly.
have to tell us what you're talking about.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll
RA.
be talking about it another time.
Okay.
It did very quickly. It did
Yeah,
say no changes on that aspect uh, for the time being,
yeah, of performing intermarriages, accepting intermarriages.
but being welcoming and everything else.
Yeah,
This
which,
is the short version.
yeah, and
Thank you.
frankly, that didn't say anything. Because that's what congregations and rabbis have been doing probably for 25 years. So,
Indeed.
um, but so let's go on with this. Finishing up the Gemara, we
What is
learned.
we learned Rabbi
Oh, wait,
Natan,
no, sorry, you're right. What is the meaning?
what is the meaning of that which is written? And you shall not mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
This is an interesting, kind of funny line. Go ahead.
We learned that Rabbi Natan says, a defect that is in you, do not mention it to your fellow. Thus people say, one who has a person hanged in his family does not say to another member of his household, hang a fish for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, it's I have a feeling that in the whatever 1500 years or more that this expression, this popular aphorism has kind of lost its meaning. Um, but we get the idea. It's like, if God forbid, like someone in their family had someone who was hanged, oh, do you hang this for me? I mean, it just doesn't, it's insensitive. But it really goes back, and I think more clearly stated before that, we were strangers in the land of Egypt. We know what it's like to go through it, and you gotta have a little compassion for the person, and you can't when you know that you've got the same the same defect, you can't go pointing it out in everybody else. So
But
okay,
that means they're recognizing that we were not converts age.
right. Although the reality is we were. I mean,
Well, not in the
Avraham.
Torah's reality.
Yeah. So
Yes,
now let's
scale
take.
maybe.
So now let's take a look at what some of the Mefarshim have to say on this topic. First of all, Ibn Ezra, and he's coming Viger, a stranger.
Do you want someone
With
else to
somebody else,
read?
like sure.
A
Susie, were you volunteering?
stranger. When a stranger commits himself not to worship idols, you shall not wrong him in your land, because you are more powerful than he is. Remember that you were strangers like him. When scripture makes mention of the stranger who is powerless, it similarly takes note of the orphan and widow who are powerless Israelites. After saying you shall not afflict, which is in the plural, scripture says if you, in the singular, afflict, because whoever sees a person afflicting the orphan and the widow and does not aid them is also considered an afflictor.
A couple things to unpack here, which are really remarkable. So, first of all, how is Ibn Ezra understanding? How does it? What does he feel the context is for this particular command? So, yes, we have this command not to afflict the stranger, but that is really part of a larger concern.
He's mentioning power,
Hmm.
and so he's describing the stranger as powerless.
Right. It's not just, even though understanding the ger as a um, a convert
He's
is also
making it clear it's not a convert. I mean, he says
right.
in verse 19, "Who ger toshav ki ein
Right.
lo ozer mishpacha."
So, very clear. And also, it's kind of expanding it. It's not, I mean, to some extent, if you talk about a convert, that somewhat limits it. But, there's still a lot of precedent for expanding it and understanding it. And it is important to recognize that within the context of Mishpatim, which has a lot of laws, this does come in contact, and we'll see somebody who comments on that later on. This does come as part of, a sense of compassion and concern. So it is, very, very important law that can be expanded. And we see that as well in Ramban, Moshe ben Nachman.
Yeah, but the important thing I think too is the end sentence where it says if you're an onlooker to a crime
Yes,
and
thank you.
you are equally, well, I don't know if it's equally, but you are considered an afflictor.
Yeah, the Rabbi Zucker just quoted a line from Vayikra, very important. Don't stand idly by the blood of your fellow. That it is within Judaism a deep concern to take responsibility. All Kol Yisrael Arevim Zabazeh, all Israel's responsible for one another. Lo Tamod al Dam Reyecha. That even when they caution someone in testifying in a capital case, and they really impress upon the witnesses that, you know, uh, you have to remember that if you sentence him to death, if you are testifying against him for a capital case, you are in fact, dooming him and all of his descendants. The whole idea of, one person produces an entire world. But then they say, you have to, but you can't stand idly by. You have to, if you know something, if you see something, you have to respond. And I think that that's also very much true, that we have to take responsibility for what happens in the world. Um, of course, it's often a little bit more complicated in reality. We have, I've spoken on this before, the whole idea of, um, for example, officer assisted shootings, and that you get a view from a particular camera, or somebody's cell phone, and that's the story, but it's not necessarily the whole story,
It's
because
not the story;
uh,
it's the angle.
yeah, it's exactly, there's one angle, but if you have a different camera angle, you get a slightly different picture, kind of like I mean,
Not the
unless
angle of the camera, also the angle of the photographer, if you get my point, and the
yes,
reporter.
yeah, exactly. So
And the newspaper that's publishing it.
In Jewish law is that you have to have multiple witnesses that are
right.
not related to each other.
Yeah, there's for those days, before DNA and et cetera, they wanted to really establish the facts of a case. Even in the Torah, the darashta v'chakarta hetev, you have to clearly examine the matter. So, we do have to be a little bit we understand that the real world is a little bit more complicated. Nonetheless, there is a sense in Judaism that we are responsible. So so let's go on with Ramban here and in his commentary on our biblical verse.
For sojourners were you in the land of Egypt. There is no reason why all strangers from countries outside the land of Egypt should be included here because of our having been strangers in the land of Egypt. And there is no reason why they be assured forever against being wronged or oppressed because we were once strangers there. Now, Rashi explained that this is a reason for you shall not vex him, God. No, you shall not vex him.
Instead of saying he,
Yeah.
I just put in God.
God warned against vexing with words, for if you vex him, you can also vex you by saying to you, you also descend from strangers. A fact that is in
A
you.
defect.
Hmm?
A defect.
Defect.
Oh, a defect that is in you. Do not mention it to your fellow, in your fellow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Rabbi,
so basically Rashi explained that, Ramban is raising the question. So, yes, we have this answer, you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. So why does this prohibition apply to all people, not just Egyptians? Why, especially, we were in Egypt, we weren't in these other places. Why is this a general prohibition? And Rashi's explanation is that, well, one, they can all, whatever you say against them, they can always turn against you. Which, of course, we know very well because that's what's happening in the world today, where anti-Israel forces and anti-Semitic forces, which are pretty much the same thing, they are trying to make claims against Israel that, you know, you do the same thing as what was done. I mean, you're the same. You're not unique. You're not distinct. Um, and so okay, go on. And now he's going to tackle Ibn Ezra's take.
Rabbi Abraham Ibn Ezra explained the verses. Remember that you were strangers as he is now, but there is in all these comments no real reason for the law.
No, I don't know. But that's his, this is kind of typical of Ramban. He said, here's what Rashi says, here's what Ibn Ezra says, but let me tell you the right thing. Go on.
The correct interpretation appears to me to be that he is saying, do not wrong a stranger or oppress him, thinking as you might that none can deliver him out of your hand. For you know that you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and I saw the oppression wherein the Egyptians oppressed you, and I avenged your cause on them, because I behold the tears of such who are oppressed and have no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors there is power, and I deliver each one from him that is too strong for him.
This is really a very interesting commentary.
Hmm.
So first of all, what is he saying here? That why does this prohibition apply to everyone, i.e., the prohibition against wronging any stranger? Why is this line, why you were strangers in the land of Egypt? Why is that such a powerful line? He's not just talking about on one hand, he's talking about an historical experience, but he's talking about something else.
God is compassionate and doesn't like to see people oppressed.
Yes, that, here he's giving, there's a theological response that, God rescued you, and God will always respond to the person who is oppressed. And even have to remember that the famous concluding sections of Amos, Prophet Amos, Halo chivnehu she'im atem li, b'nei Yisrael. You're just like the Cushites to me. Um, yes, I took you out of Egypt, which normally we think that, this is really, that's what created us. That's a very unique kind of experience. But I took Aram from Kir, I also brought about all these other peoples. So it's not just
Have to consider those verses. Those were the main enemies of Israel at the time.
right. So
So
like even
don't say God is on my side. Your behavior counts.
right, which is precisely the rest of those words.
And you
Um,
notice that the Haftarah for almost is put right smack at the end of Parshat Kedoshim, which
right.
ends up with V'hiyitem risigu ava avdil etchem min ha'amim liyot li. Three
Yep.
verses after that, you say, "Halo kibnei kuchiyim atem li b'nei Israel." That's a perfect example of the Haftarah deliberately being selected in order to balance off a message in a Torah in a
Yep.
parsha that sounds a little bit too far, over
Yep.
the top, like Biden said last night or the night before. What
It's,
Hamas is demanding is over the top. Did you hear that one?
I didn't hear it,
Biden
but I
said
heard
that.
of it, and just
Yeah.
hearing the terms of Hamas, of course, they, despite the fact that they speak Arabic, they understand the word chutzpah better than any Jew. Um, but here that I mean it's such a stunning haftarah and the rabbi's placement of it. Um, but this is powerful. Okay, go on.
Likewise, you shall not afflict the widow and the orphan, for I will hear their cry. For all these people do not rely upon themselves, but trust in me. And in another verse, he added this reason: for you know that being of a stranger, since you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That is to say, you know that every stranger feels depressed and is always sighing and crying, and his eyes are always directed towards God. Therefore, he will have mercy upon him, even as he showed mercy to you, just as it is written, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up into God by reason of the bondage, meaning that he had mercy on them not because of their merits, but only on account of the bondage.
Very powerful theological statement here by Ramban that God is the God of the oppressed. That now, again, we have to be careful because we have a narrative in today's society that you can divide society into the oppressed and the oppressors. You're either one or the other. And, there's a very, there can be very open definition of oppressed and a very narrow definition of oppressor. And we know the problems with all of that. But I'm much more interested in the sense that they take this, again, as I said before, understanding the stranger, we can understand it as a resident alien, we can understand it as a sojourner, we can understand it as a convert, but also the idea of just thinking of it as the other who is powerless or in difficult circumstances, on that what our tradition, or at least a number of voices in our tradition, I mean, this does not encompass all of the commentaries on this verse by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that all of these are necessarily the pshat meaning, but certainly taking these two commands that appear twice in our parasha, and as the Talmud itself points out, 36 times in the Torah, that this is a very powerful expression of compassion for others. Not that we don't have other lines like that in the Torah, but yeah, this is something that's very important. And even Ramban putting it in the theological level that, this is our understanding of who God is. And now I just want to share a couple of lines from Other contemporary writers, first of all, Julia Andelman from JTS. This is from one of the Torah from JTS from a few years ago. Who would like to read this one?
I can read, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Ricky.
Likewise, you shall not afflict the widow and the
No, no,
orphan.
we just read
Oh,
we just read that. Rabbi Julia Andelman at the bottom here.
the Torah instructs us, you shall not wrong a stranger in your midst or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. It continues, you shall not ill treat my widow or orphan, and then enjoins us to take particular care when engaging in business dealings with the poor, given their financial precariousness. Taken together, this series of exhortations makes clear that we must take care of the most vulnerable individuals in our society, the marginal, the insecure, those who lack safety nets to fall back on in hard times.
Yeah, so she's just, she's basically given a drasha here, but it's certainly, I think, a very appropriate understanding of these laws in Mishpatim and many other things throughout the Torah that there is a desire for honesty and compassion and recognizing the people in society who do not necessarily have the power, the financial wherewithal, people who are in dangerous, precarious, as she says it, situations. We have to be sensitive to and aware of the vulnerable in society and care for them. And, by the way, well, let's go on because, as always, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Alav Shalom, was quite articulate. Go ahead.
I used to think that the most important line in the Bible was, love your neighbor as yourself. Then I realized that it is easy to love your neighbor because he or she is usually quite like yourself. What is hard is to love the stranger, one whose color, culture, or creed is different from yours. That is why the command, love the stranger because you were once strangers, resonates so often throughout the Bible. It is summoning us now.
And that's just the article he was writing, Refugee Crisis, Love the Stranger Because You Were Once Strangers Calls Us Now. That was where the article was from. And certainly, I think that it also speaks to us at a time, we're coming up that the border is becoming a major, major topic. And frankly, rightfully so. I mean, we have a lot of problems with how we deal with our border security. How do we deal with immigration? Immigration is unquestionably a challenge to any society. It's a challenge socially, it's a challenge financially, and a country has to think very clearly how it's going to effectively deal with it because of all the problems that can be created, and also as well the problems of illegal immigrants. That that is difficult, not obviously because there are all kinds of concerns about what kind of people are coming in the country. That's always an issue, but also the people who are illegal, they are talking about being powerless. We don't necessarily even know they're here. We don't know, so they can be exploited and are exploited. So, it's certainly an issue. It's not going to have any simple
Yeah,
resolution.
but it's more of an issue, Rabbi Popke, when there are millions of people knocking on a door. Plenty of other countries don't have this problem to hardly any extent because nobody wants to go there.
Right.
You know, I always smile when I hear people saying things are so bad in America. I think I want to move to Canada, and I say, okay, just make sure you don't get knocked over by the wave of people who are trying to get into America
Yeah. Or frankly, the
or
people are
risking
trying to
their
get into
lives to
Canada.
get into America. That's a better way of saying.
Yeah. But I mean, I have to say, having been in Canada, there's not a small number of people trying to get in Canada. They just try and go through the United States sometimes. But I think overall, the message that comes, and from other laws in Mishpatim, it's not just, but the idea of compassion for the other is clearly so important to the Torah. It's clearly so important to Judaism. And something to always keep in mind. We're coming up. My friend Rabbi Bob Carroll will be speaking on doing interfaith in troubling times. One of the things that we have to keep in mind, and it doesn't mean giving up our own values and our own concerns. Just as America can really want to be an open country in the sense that we want people to be able to come here and find their way and live the American dream, but at the same time we can be concerned about our own economy and our own populations and health, etc., all the issues that are raised. But as we do interfaith, we sometimes have to step back and not talk but listen, and really without giving up anything of our own personal feelings, ideas, beliefs, practices, whatever, to be able to be open to the other, someone who is different, and listening to their story. And certainly when we're talking about people who are struggling. And I have to say that the Jewish community can generally be very, very proud of how it has responded. I really would love to turn to Ilhan Omar and tell her, you're from Somalia. You should only know what the Jews in Canada have done for people from Somalia. You know, you should only know what Jews have done for various different groups of people who have come in. Doesn't mean we're always perfect, but going right back to what is crucial in our tradition and what is a very strong teaching. So, toda rabah. Any last minute questions, comments?
No, everything was great. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Rosh Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom.
Yes, tonight. Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom. Take
Charlie,
care.
I need to talk with you if you can stay on for a moment.
No problem. And Yehudi, I hope that Brenda's doing okay. Give her my best.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so everybody else, take care, and
Thank you.
we'll have
Shabbat
a
shalom,
rabbi's meeting.
everyone. Okay, my congregation turns out, because of when it falls, Erev Purim, nobody's going to come out. So we're not even going to try to do a service. So I'm available if you would like me to come Saturday night.
Okay.
To do anything you want.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, because we are going to have a service Saturday night, but recognizing that since it's going to start at 8 o'clock, not a lot of people are going to come. We're also going to do, probably the first time in a long, long time, we're also going to do our Megillah reading on Sunday morning. And we're going to, have to sit down. We're going to have a regular service, although we'll begin it.
That's what we're doing. Everything's going to be on Sunday morning by us.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So we're also going to try
join
and.
You then.
No, that's
join
fine.
you Saturday
That's fine.
night.
Yeah. But we would love to have you. So if there are any particular prakim that you would like to chant, you're on. Or if you just want to lead the davening, that's fine with me too.
Last year. If you want to, the same way we broke it out last year, if you recall.
I don't, unfortunately.
I think I did the even numbers. You did the odd numbers.
Yeah, that may be it. I mean, I'm going to have to learn the whole thing anyway, so whatever is fine with me. Or if you just, and even if you just wanted to do the davening, because you
make
can do
use
funny
of
stuff.
the spiel again, the spiel text.
No, I just want to keep this fairly simple.
Just straight Megillah.
Yeah, because it's
straight
still late, and I'm not expecting a huge turnout. I could be wrong. We can, the middle of the summer, we can get a great turnout for Megillat Eicha. So, I mean, I know the ritual. I asked the Religious Life Committee, what do you think? Should we have something Saturday night? And it was almost unanimous, yes. So, I know they'll be there. So, but thank you. That would be great.
Good. And the other question is, you may need to think a little bit more. I've got a congregant whose kids are she cannot get pregnant, so they did in vitro with a surrogate,
Hmm.
and that's going well.
Thank God.
They know that the child will need to be converted, and they made all arrangements for that. But my congregant wants to know if you know of any prayer that can be recited uh, concerning the embryo, the surrogate. Uh, I don't have the newer RA manual, so I've got the old one. So I don't know of anything. And I looked online, and I only found a prayer for a surrogate to say, but not a prayer on behalf of a surrogate. If you know of anything,
Wait
it
one
would be
moment.
very much
Yeah. Wait
appreciated.
one moment. I think I have
Sure,
something here I could look at.
good.
Okay. So let me see. I have Talking to God by Naomi
Okay.
Levy, which is really, I mean,
I
it's a
know her from my
great.
days in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, yeah. So this is really, just wonderful. Um Prayer for a couple hoping to conceive, prayer when one experiences infertility, during pregnancy, difficult pregnancy, end of the ninth month, during labor, breathing prayer, those who assisted birth. Interesting. And there are prayers that probably could be adjusted, and the prayer for a prayer during labor, end of the ninth month, um, a prayer for all who assisted birth, physicians, nurses, midwives, birthing coaches, loved ones, that probably could be adopted as well. I don't necessarily know these. Then they get into termination, prayer of gratitude for an adopted child, so special needs. Yeah, so she doesn't have anything specific for surrogacy. Um, she's got like about everything else, every other experience in the world.
Right.
Um, I mean, it's an awesome, awesome book. Um, Let me also, I don't know if there's anything in Life Cycles, Jewish Women on Life Passages and Personal Milestones, the first volume by Deborah Ornstein. Jewish Adoption, Prayer for an Adopted Child. Infertility and Early Losses. A prayer for those having difficulty conceiving. Yeah, they don't really seem to have anything on um, nothing on surrogacy. I don't know how much, I don't necessarily know these that well, so I don't. I'm trying to remember. I probably have it here too, somewhere. My classmate Nina Beth Carden did a whole book on childbirth, the prayers for the mother. I don't remember seeing anything on surrogacy in there. It could be. Um, the only other place that I would check is Ritual Well, though I've not always been impressed with everything there. It's just, they're trying, and I appreciate that. But
Mhm.
I'm just not sure.
If you
Excuse
come
me. What?
across anything that you think it's still 3 or 4 months away,
Yeah.
the birth, but if you come across anything,
Yeah, I'll keep looking.
great.
Yeah, everything going
I'll
well?
ask Ina anything in the reform
Yes.
possible.
Hmm. Also being a woman, she may be more tied into that than I am, or you are.
Right, right.
Not necessarily, but she may be.
Indeed, indeed.
Um,
It was interesting. I found very quickly something, a prayer for the surrogate to say, but
mhm.
particularly after your lesson today, I'm not sure that they would want to ask a non-Jew to please obligate yourself to say this prayer in effect. That I think that's bordering on pressure type of
Yeah.
thing. But another, from a prayer for the surrogate, I couldn't find anything.
No, I think they're just general prayers for healing, and I think you can probably cobble something
Yeah,
together
yeah, that's
from
right.
some of these other prayers
General.
that Naomi has and incorporate it within the prayer for healing,
Right,
something
right.
like that.
Okay, good,
Things going
good.
well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's we're 80 families. Some are spread out, and a lot of older
Yes.
families. So to get people out, I'm happy that I get a minion Friday night.
Hmm.
Uh, by hook or by crook type of thing. Not certainly not at the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat, but usually by in time by the Amidah we're there. Not every time, but mostly. But inclement weather really
Right.
affects things for us, and so they decided Saturday night was just wasn't going to make it. Not
Mm.
and certainly not at an 8 o'clock start.
Yeah, I can understand that. Well, I would be worried about it here, but yeah, but also I think it's kind of challenging because both for Scranton and for Stroudsburg is you've got people scattered all over the Poconos. And of course, in inclement weather, I mean, it's we there's
Scranton,
no
is a stronger community, but they definitely are more in the snow zone,
so it's
and
it's
they
tough.
they get hit much harder than we do.
Hmm.
But basically, it's been going very nicely.
Terrific.
So, and Elaine and I are enjoying it very much.
Good, good. That's terrific. And Elena's feeling fine and doing well.
Yeah,
Thank
100%.
God. Terrific.
Yeah, good, good. So thank you again, and
Oh, my
Shabbat
pleasure.
Shalom.
So, yeah, Shabbat, and so much. Thank you so much for
Regards to
joining
all
us,
of your
continuing
family.
to join us. I really appreciate it. It's great. Oh, it's
A
great to see
pleasure.
you, but it's
I mean, as
also,
soon as I get nothing Saturday night, I said, okay, I know where I can go.
for, I mean, in general, joining us for the class, still joining us for the class. It's great.
Oh,
And of
pleasure.
course for
Always a pleasure.
Purim, that's wonderful.
Yeah, great. Good. Good.
All right.
Okay.
Kol Tuv.
Again, regards.
Thanks. Take care.
The heat. Bye-bye.